Welcome back to Stroke Warrior Radio. You're listening to our global platform, now over 1,000 voices strong, where survivors, caregivers, and professionals come together and what recovery really looks like. This is where we go beyond surviving, I think, and this is something I needed desperately in my recovery, and start building a roadmap toward healing, purpose, and connection. I'm your host, Ralph Cortez, and today's conversation is one I've been really looking forward to. I wrote something here about what this is about. I'm going to tell you what I felt in the beginning. I didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't feel comfortable. My body felt different. My mind felt different. And that sometimes I just didn't feel like I was the person anymore. Today I'm anxious to talk to you. Our guest today is Stacy Wyatt, founder of Embracing Spirit Yoga and Wellness, an adaptive yoga teacher, brain injury specialist, author, and autism mom whose work is rooted in one belief: everybody deserves to feel whole. Stacy, welcome to Stroke Warrior Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this. I believe it's my life purpose. And the more I can talk about it and bring awareness and give people hope, then I'm all for it. Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. So tell us a little bit about yourself anyway to get started. Then we'll talk about my statements. What led you to founding Embracing Spirit Yoga?
Well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, but I knew that I wanted to bring yoga to people. When I saw the effects that it had for myself, I wanted to bring the yoga and mindfulness to other people, but I didn't want to teach in a yoga studio for typical, normal, perfect people. I wanted to bring yoga into places of the least likely people who are struggling to figure out what's new to them or what's a new normal. And so I knew in the very beginning that I wanted to share yoga with people that had certain barriers. I wasn't sure that the barriers were always going to be neurological based, but I was open to any sort of barrier. And so that became my mission in life, is to figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to serve. And I love the neurological world. And so that's where I landed.
What does Embracing Spirit mean to you? I mean, how does that philosophy show up in your work?
I believe that just the word embrace itself has a softness to it that is inviting us to put our arms around the wholeness of us and not just focus on one thing. To me, an embrace is embodying wholeness. It's saying that maybe my body may not be where I want it to be, but I can embrace the mind that I have, or my spirit, or my faith, or my gratitude, or my hobbies, my joy, and that we have a wholeness and a totality to our being. And so by embracing that and then finding the spirit within all of us that I think we all forget that we have, especially when we're struggling or we have a life-changing event, I think it's hard. And so I like to embrace the spirit of us and not just focus on one aspect.
Nice, nice. I love that. How long have you been practicing and teaching yoga? And
I've been
what?
practicing for myself. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right.
I've been practicing for 24 years and I've been teaching for 20, so 2 decades.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that long. That's
Yeah.
very cool. When did you make the shift towards adaptive and the therapeutic approaches you use now? And what caused it?
Well, I was a young single mom. I had 3 little children, and my daughter was born with a disability that didn't start to really show up in my world as a mom until she was about 5. And as she aged and became closer to 10 and 12, I felt like if yoga was so good for me, it would certainly be good for her. And I thought it would bring us together and be something we could do together. She was not interested at all. But I did a lot of training on the adaptive yoga method that would help somebody with a variety of disability, whether it's cognitive disability or physical disability, find themselves in a better space. And so I really went at it for her, and she wasn't interested. So I took my knowledge and my passion and what I knew I wanted to do with my life. And I went out into my local community and I started volunteering with a therapeutic recreation program in my city that served people of all types of disabilities. It wasn't until I had really been volunteering for a few years that I found my passion really lied in people that were living a very normal life like you and I, and then an event happens, whether it's a stroke or a car accident or a diagnosis of Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, something within that neurological realm that I really found like this is what I'm supposed to do. So I like to say that my daughter really helped me see that my life was here to reach people that are living with a different experience than a normal. I hate the word normal, so I do that a lot because normal
Yeah.
is a setting on your dryer. That's the
Yep.
only thing normal is. There's nothing normal. And so
No.
it was really about her. It was finding acceptance about having a child with a disability and what that meant for my life as a mom, for her brothers. My whole life, I will be her caregiver. And it was a grieving period. And so as I realized that grief comes in all versions and that people who experience a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, there's a grief that comes and it comes in waves and cycles. And if mindfulness can help somebody navigate the feelings of grief and loss, I want to be the person that helps facilitate that. So I became really, really passionate about helping people not so much learn how to touch their toes because nothing magical happens when we touch our toes. But if we can find grace within our newness of our body and acceptance and appreciation, or even the hard stuff that our lives have, then I think we're on our way of being better people. So that's where I came from.
Nice. I love that word newness instead of
Yeah.
normal. That's a great
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you describe? I talked a little bit about yoga before we get into brain injury in particular, but how would you describe adaptive yoga to someone who's never heard of it? What makes it different from typical yoga?
Well, I think for me, as I bring about the word adaptive into my everyday, as I go out in the world and teach my community, I want people to realize that I'm not looking to just modify a shape that is a common yoga pose or a common yoga shape. I'm not necessarily modifying that to somebody who's sitting in a wheelchair. What I'm doing is I'm adapting the entire totality of the practice, which includes our mind, our body, and our spirit, and making it accessible to somebody who might be living in a wheelchair or might be experiencing paralysis. And so I'm not going to tell you, well, we're going to take this very common pose that we do on the floor and adapt it to a chair. I don't want to really necessarily focus on that, but I would like to take the understanding and awareness that we have while we're in a certain shape and help people feel a connection to their body that they may not have felt prior to their event. And then definitely after the event, can I still feel an awareness? Because I think many people that I've worked with have wanted to go back to before the event. I want my life to be exactly the same. I
Yeah.
want to run, I want to drive, I want to work. And that reality may not be true. And so, where can I find acceptance in what I can do within the newness of my body? And so, I mean, I love the physical body. I love stretching it. I love teaching ways to enhance it. But my adaptive yoga is a much deeper inward look at ourselves as what do we do with our life and how do we show up when an event happens that turns our world upside down.
Simplifying it in my stroke brain, the physical is a misdirect to get you into your head.
Yes, and into your spirit and into your gratitude and what do you do with the pain in your heart, the grief in your heart when you can't move your left side or you can't remember things or your language, your spoken word is different? How can you still be your best self despite that?
You say to people that may not be know about adaptive yoga or come to you believing yoga isn't for them. What do you say to them to maybe give them a shot at a better life?
Well, I'm pretty sneaky with getting people to engage. I'm pretty good at it. I say it's one of my greatest skills is when somebody says, "I'm not doing that weird yoga stuff." I will often say, "Just come hang out with me for a bit. I want to get to know you. I want to hear your story or I want to talk to you about my story. I want to just be with you." I think connection is the number one piece And the definition of yoga, if we just break the word yoga down, yoga means union. And so right now, you and I are having a beautiful yoga session because we're in union together. And so when people have resistance about, I can't get on the floor, so I can't do yoga, or I can't touch my toes, or if somebody's living with paralysis, I can't move my right arm. I can't. I try to reframe it. And this came from a student of mine who has a traumatic brain injury that instead of saying I can't, what if we reframed it to I used to move my right side. I used to get on the floor and now I do this. Now I sit in a chair to have my yoga practice. And now I have somebody take my right side and move it for me. And that limiting word of I can't thinks us back into the past that we cannot change. But having the language of I used to do it gives a memory that's grateful and that's appreciative of a season of our life. We're always in a season. You know, I've suffered a lot of physical challenges in my last 10 years. I've had 6 hip surgeries that have failed. I cannot get on the floor. So do I give up everything and quit? Or do I say, okay, well, I'm going to adapt my yoga practice to look a little different. I'm going to sit in a chair because I used to sit on the floor and now I sit in a chair. And it really softens the pain that we feel on the I can't and gives a fondness to what we used to be. We all used to run. At some point in our life, we were all running. Not everybody runs, and that's okay.
Wow, incredible, incredible how you frame that. I like that. Can you walk us through what a typical session might look like for a new client?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In particular, the evaluation.
Okay. So an evaluation part, when I don't know anything about anybody, I usually sit across from somebody like I'm sitting across from you. And we'll just do some things that I can look at the body and determine where there might be some imbalances in the body. I don't ask a lot of questions. I don't necessarily dive too deep into the details because I want to experience what's happening right now versus what was happening back then. So, one thing that I like to do, especially for women, because as women, we like to bake, typically we like to cook, is I will just simply have somebody start to circle their arm, and so just do this with me as I'm saying to a new client, not you. Let's make a cake. And so for somebody who's experienced trauma to their brain or an acquired brain injury, they might only be able to do it without crossing that midline. And so that tells me right away that they have a hard time reaching the right to the left, which would then be hard in the kitchen or at the grocery store reaching for an item off the shelf. They're going to be limited in that. So I want to work on that. I want to help them reestablish ways to get that right arm to cross. So I see that. And then we make the frosting for the cake. And now I start to bring in memory and language. I don't know what goes in frosting, so tell me, butter, sugar, chocolate. And then we revisit that. That's a memory recall. It's language, it's listening, it's movement. And then we do cake and frosting together, which is really hard for somebody who's had a bump on their head or has experienced a stroke. And then we go backwards. And then I might say, tell me what day of the week it is. And so I'm getting information in, I'm moving the body across the midline. There's a lot happening in the brain. And people get frustrated. And so then we stop and we take a breath. And then that teaches them that even when life is hard and confusing and overwhelming, we can stop, we can breathe, we can re regulate, and that it's not the end of the world if this is hard. We'll work on it. We'll work on it. And then I do some balance things. Rocking can be very regulating for somebody who is dysregulated in the brain. So I ask people to rock with me. We do a little rocking chair. This movement tells the nervous system, the brain, to be calm. If that makes somebody dizzy or feel uncomfortable, then we just simply stop. We'll get there. It's not the end of the world. For gentlemen, it's a little bit tricky because not every man knows how to make a cake. So, what I'm doing when I'm doing cake and frosting is I'm going back in time into memory that's in their brain. And that can be empowering for somebody who feels that they can't do something. They just told me how to make cake. But for gentlemen, it's a little bit tricky. So I've figured out a few ways to get men to hang out with me as I say it. I often don't call it yoga because men are like, I'm not doing that. That's
Yeah,
weird
right.
stuff. And so I'm like, hey, are you a fisherman? Do you know how to fish? And they're like, oh, yeah, I love fishing. All right, grab your fishing pole. Let's start casting. And so I'm asking them to do 2 things with their hands. Now, if I've had a person in front of me who can't move one of their hands, I'll just hold their hand up for them. Then they reel in the reel. then they throw the fishing line. And while we're doing that, I'm asking them a lot of questions. What's your date of birth? What season are we in? What's your favorite color? And that's creating a lot of cognitive chaos, I like to call it, but it's helping those neurons refire that have been dormant. So I do that for men. And then I also have become almost professional referee for the football signals. So I take people through touchdown, field goal, safety, false start, personal foul, pass interference, roughing the passer. I learned them all. I'm getting people moving. I'm getting people to cross the midline. I'm getting people to think. I'm getting people to feel happy. And most men know football signals. So then we play football. We do the whole thing and they're moving. And that's what's the adaptive piece. I'm not taking a really long yoga sequence and just recycling it into a chair. I'm adapting it to meet the person who's in front of me that might be a football fan, that might be a fisherman, that might be a world-class baker, that might be a mom. What does it feel like to rock that baby? Let's do it together. So I'm adapting the movements to whoever's in front of me and making it accessible and fun. It's really fun. It's fun. It's good.
Where were you in my recovery?
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, I often say I'm the captain. It took me a long time to realize I was the captain of my own team. That I
Yes.
could go out and interview physical therapists. I didn't have to keep them. I could fire them. I not only interviewed, but I inspected their locations, things like that.
Yeah.
What are some of the, and to me, what you're doing is phenomenal because you're getting into the whole person,
Yeah.
the thought process. And I just love it. I wish I would have known you before. It wouldn't have taken so long to get where I'm at. So what should a survivor, stroke warrior, TBI warrior, whatever, be looking for in a yoga person or an adaptive yoga person? Right now it's like, to me, there is no yoga anymore. It's adaptive yoga or none. So
Yeah.
what should they be looking for? And what are some of the red flags that maybe they should stay away from that person?
Well, that's a great question. I think somebody should be looking for a yoga teacher that sees the wholeness of a person and not just sees a stroke. I think that's really important to not just hyper focus on an aspect. And this comes again from my daughter. Growing up as a young person, people began to just identify her as disabled. And I would always push back and say, she's also a beautiful little girl with brown hair. She happens to have a disability. It's a part of her, but it is not the whole person. So if a yoga teacher is not seeing the whole person, the mind, body, the spirit, the memories, the history, the passions, the career, the family, if they're not taking the whole person in and simply wanting to get the person physically better, I think that's a red flag because we're going to age, whether we have a stroke or not, or a brain injury, things are going to change. And we have to be able to tap into somebody's whole life and the things that bring them joy instead of hyper focusing on what's wrong with somebody. So I think that's a red flag. And then another red flag to me is the yoga mindset that we have to speak a different language to have authority. I don't speak the language that's associated with yoga because that would be like as if I was speaking Spanish to you right now and you don't know Spanish. It puts a dislevel to our relationship. I know more than you and you're way down here. I don't want that. I want our relationship to be connected at equals. I will learn from you. I will learn more from you than you will probably learn from me. And so a yoga teacher needs to leave her ego at the door or his ego at the door and be willing to get curious and willing to learn about somebody's grief and loss and struggles and celebrations and passions, what brings them joy, and not create a barrier by speaking a language that nobody else knows.
I've been through a lot of therapies where it's checklist. There's a
Yes.
protocol to it. I found later on, and this is why I do these interviews, there's alternative therapies out there. To me, there's 13 therapies after a stroke. That
Mhm.
includes mental health, acupuncture, chiropractor, adaptive yoga, whatever. There's at least 13. So, I mean, that's something that I don't think we realize, and they didn't tell us. You know, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? How many patients come to you with the doctor told me this is as good as it's going to get?
Exactly. And I think that what I've experienced in my life is somebody suffers a stroke and the priority is toileting, eating, ambulating. Can they transfer themselves? Can they walk? Can they talk? Can they eat? And those are all very important things. But where are we in the process of depression, anxiety, sleep, nervous system, grief, loss, acceptance? And so part of my work that I feel is one of the most important parts is helping people navigate those things. And I'm astounded and shocked that people aren't getting more mental health support when their life completely changes. Let's just get them toileting. Let's just get them walking and get them home. And that's the piece that I bring into somebody's life.
Yeah,
Look at the other things.
and I'm not. I'm kind of ashamed, but I'm not too proud to say that I've had some twice very dark moments
Yeah.
that they didn't tell me was going to happen.
Yeah.
Once I got some counseling and support groups, it got better. So I, I,
Yes.
I agree with your approach. How does yoga and mindfulness specifically benefit individuals recovering or living with a stroke or brain injury?
I think the mindfulness piece is when we can, anybody, but especially somebody who's living with a change of any sort of neurological change, can remember that mindfulness is simply being aware of what we're doing while we're doing it. And that knowledge of being aware of what we're doing while we're doing it can keep us in the present moment because we don't know what the future will be. We can't undo the past. We can't live our life with bitterness and regret. We can appreciate right now. Right now, I can use my senses to see that just beyond my screen, I see a lot of green. I can hear the birds chirping. I can smell my grass just got cut yesterday. So there's a lot of things coming into me that if I wasn't paying attention and I wasn't mindful, I would miss. People who have had a neurological event often struggle with the present moment because they want to go back to the day before the event when life was okay. And we can't do that. And so there's a lot of grace that has to come in. And so I think for me, I really try to help them see that the sensation that you might feel in your body when we go into a forward fold and we try to touch our ankles or maybe our knees, there's a stretch that comes. So let's be mindful of that stretch. Let's talk about where we're feeling it. Maybe we're feeling tension in our jaw. We're not even aware of that, but we bite down and we clench because we're in pain or we're in fear or we're in sadness. And so helping people to recognize those subtleties in the body by being mindful of themselves as well as their environment helps people stay now because now is all we have. And when we have now as our focus, our mental health is happier and healthier. We can't live in the past. And all that does is sink us lower. And so, yoga and mindfulness, the physical part of yoga is feeling a sensation in the body. Mindfulness is what do I do with that sensation? Do I say, to myself, well, you can't even touch your toes. You're not good enough, or you're not doing it right, or you're so tight and inflexible. What are you trying? Those are all just chatter in the brain that is not good. And so sometimes we catch ourselves like having a negative thought about myself. I'm terrible at balance. I can't stand on one leg. It's okay. It's not a big deal if you can or you can't. But it's the narrative that we have about ourselves that ultimately will help our life be better if we can stop the negative narrative and notice the breeze is making my flowers outside my window move. And that's a reminder that I can just go with the flow. I can move just like the leaves. I don't have to stay stuck. So I really pull a lot into an experience, I guess is the long answer.
I think, too, one of the things, at least for me, was the sensory overload, the cognitive issues, that fog everything that's going on. What are there particular aspects, breathwork, movement, meditation, that are most impactful for brain injury survivors?
Absolutely. And I talk a lot about the midline. And the midline is so important for us to work. And here's how I was taught and helped to understand why the midline is so important. As we have our two hemispheres of our brain, in the middle of the brain is a strip that we all have called the corpus callosum, and it connects those hemispheres. The corpus callosum is like the train station. When we have an event in our brain, one side or the other, we have an event, a stroke, a brain injury. the train station shuts down. There's no longer communication between left and right. We're in sort of a hypervigilant survival mode that we don't even realize. And so the work that I do, the movements that I do, bring the train station back into business. I get people to use the train station by just picking over here. Let's pick some berries for the pie. How many berries do we need? How many lemons do we need? Whatever. We're just crossing. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking the right side and the left side and I'm crossing them. That makes that train station come alive. The neurons start to wake up again. Neurotransmitters are starting to talk to each other. So we do a lot of crossing the midline. A lot, because it brings balance to the brain, it brings balance to the body. If somebody who has had a stroke or a TBI and they're having a hard time walking straight, they sort of veer off to one side. Well, let's just sit and chat for a little bit and rock. I'm working the balance system. I don't have to stand on one leg. All I have to do is make my body cross that invisible line that connects to my train station. The more that I do that, the more harmony my brain gets, the straighter I'm going to walk. It's really simple. It really is simple. And so I've just seen over and over crossing the midline, whether we're making the pie or, we're doing some boxing motions. If I'm working with men and I put my hands up and they get to, softly tap my hands, something happens to the brain that says, okay, I'm living in chaos over here. And now I've crossed the midline and all of a sudden I feel different. I feel in control. I feel calm. I feel balanced. That's what we're looking for. Balance in and balance out. So a lot of crossing the midline, a lot of
Yeah.
breath work, because when people are in pain, emotional pain, physical pain, fear, is it going to happen again? Am I going to have another stroke? We hold the breath. And then the more breath that we hold, the less oxygen to our brain. So learning how to simply sit tall instead of slouching is going to let the lungs inflate fully, which is going to lower the cortisol in our body. And the cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. If people are constantly in fear and fight or flight, their cortisol is going to stay high. The longer our cortisol is high over time, the more at risk we are for bad things happening physically to our body. So teaching people to undo the high cortisol by simply sitting tall and breathing mindfully can be powerful in regulating the nervous system, bringing calm back to the body. I mean, we're supposed to be calm. We just live in a culture that's go, 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 go. And then we have an event in our life, and now we're surviving. We're fighting to get our new normal, whatever that is.
We opened, I said something about my fear, my anger, my uh,
Yes.
mental health, people with their body and feeling safe again.
That's a great question. I think for me, my experience sitting with hundreds of people over my 20 years who've had neurological changes is helping them to find within themselves their own version of resiliency, their own version of empowerment, learning to advocate. Even just you saying that you got to fire and hire people, that there's an advocacy that comes that you didn't even know you needed at one point in your life. And that becomes empowering. And then you begin to say, I matter. I have a voice in this. I'm not a victim, but I'm on my way. And that's just a different narrative that we have. And so when I'm working with somebody, I really want to empower them to feel good in their body as it is today. And if the left arm doesn't move at all, I'll move it for you. I'll open your hand and I'll hold it with you so that you feel that human connection. You feel that your fingers that are stuck like this 24 hours a day can really open, because I'm going to help them open. And there's a connection there. And I often say that the number one purpose in my work is connection. Not just connecting to me as the person who's sharing this experience. I don't like to call myself a teacher, but more as a sharer of this, because I'm in it with you, is that I want them to connect to themselves and see that while maybe this arm no longer moves, this arm moves great. And this feels really good when I stretch. And that feeling good sends a hormone to the brain of serotonin that says, okay, this feels good. I'm good. I'm okay. I'm okay. We want to be back into the narrative of I'm okay versus is this going to happen again? And my life sucks and I'm so pissed off. We have every right to be sad and to be mad when something changes or something happens. But staying in the sad and the mad isn't going to get us into a place of forward motion. You know, if you would have stayed mad, you wouldn't be doing this podcast. And you're
Yeah.
changing so many lives by getting out of your sadness and madness. And that's empowerment. You're confident, you're empowered, you're doing something incredibly hopeful and positive with a tragedy. And that's really what we're here to do. I felt for many years my daughter's existence was a tragedy, but I turned that into something powerful. And if she would have born a typical person, I wouldn't be doing this work. So I was able to take something that was really sad and really mad, wasn't the life I would have picked, and I
Yeah.
am doing something really good with it. And I can walk into any facility and meet anybody, regardless of their physical condition, without any fear at all. It doesn't phase me at all. I'm ready. Bring them on. It's good.
Well, I'm curious. I'm sure you have a patient out there that, and I don't want to know names, but had the most meaningful transformation that stayed with you that you can share.
You know, I do. I have a couple, but I want to share with you the most recent one because I believe that it changed a part of me that I will hope to carry with me for the rest of my life. And his story gets to be spoken through me, and it will change your listener's life. It will change. It will change. I believe it will. So I got called into an assisted living home for some crisis intervention because of the style that I operate in, meeting people knee to knee, holding people's hands, sitting with their pain, sitting with their sadness. This agency called me in for a crisis. And the crisis was it's a group home for people with traumatic brain injuries. Some of them have had strokes, some of them have had accidents. And they were eating lunch. There's 10 people that live in this home. They were eating lunch not too long ago, and one of the individuals began to choke on their food. The 9 people that were witnessing this gentleman choke were helpless to help. They're in their own experience of paralysis or inability to help. And so they're sitting in this lunchroom setting, a dining room in a home, and they're watching their friend, their roommate, their housemate come into crisis. He's turning blue. His eyes are rolling back, and we can't help. The staff person was unable to help. So EMT were called in. They came in, they provided CPR, and everybody's witnessing this. And so I was called in to help them decompress what they saw and to talk about it and to process those emotions of fear and helplessness. And will this happen to me? I watched my friends, this is going to happen to me. And so I went into this home. I knew nothing about any of the individuals. I had never met any of them, but I got them gathered in a group. We did some breath work to get into the present moment. We attuned ourselves to what was happening in the room. We listened to the sounds. We looked for shapes. We got very present in what was happening. And then we began to have the conversation about the individual who choked and tell me about him. What was he like? You know, what's his favorite thing to do? And what does he look like? Like, I didn't know him. And so I wanted them to talk openly and positively about their friend. And then we had to talk about what happened and what that felt like. And the individual that was sitting across from me is a very young man. I believe he's in his early 20s. And his accident has made his arms stuck like this. He cannot move his arms at all. And I was sitting across from him and we're processing this event, and he started to weep and he started to cry. And remember, yoga is union. So I'm in union with this person. I'm sitting right across from him. His arms are like this and he's weeping and there's just tears pouring. And I have my hands on his knees and I'm reminding him he's safe. It's okay. And he says to me, will you please wipe my tears? And so I went and got a tissue and I wiped this young kid's tears off his face because he cannot move his body. And that was the most beautiful, brave, vulnerable moment that he trusted me, who he didn't know at all, to touch his face and wipe his tears. And that is the embodiment of yoga. That is humanity. One on one, me and him were in a place where there was nothing but kindness operating. And to me, that is what yoga is all about. And it changed me. And what I get to share is, with his permission, that can I share this story? Because all it takes is kindness to change lives. And I get to be the conduit for his experience and share it with other people, that if we just go out and do good and we treat people with kindness, we can help them find healing. And so I got to go back the next day and meet this guy again. And there was laughter in the room, and there was some camaraderie and some chuckling. And, I said, "Did you ever think you'd be doing yoga in your life?" And, maybe he's a gangbanger. I don't know what his story is. But he said, "No, I never thought I'd be doing this." And he's asking when I'm coming back because there was something that happened in that session that built connection. And that's what I want my work to mean to people, is that they're connected to their feelings, to themselves, and to other people, and to feel safe, that they can be themselves regardless of their ability. I want people to feel safe.
Very cool. You got me all teared up too. Anyway, tell us about your book. What inspired you to write it and who's it for?
My book. Well, I will preface it with I'm a Capricorn. And when a Capricorn says they're going to do something, they're going to do it. And when I was struggling after my sixth hip surgery that was not going to give me pain relief, I felt like I had to get out of my pain and into my head and into my heart. And so I spent a year of physically recovering, learning how to kind of walk a different way, a new way, how to put shoes on a new way, the grief that comes from being an active younger woman to not being able to do the things I want to do. I needed to get out of that and do something good. And so I really align with seasons. I think seasons teach us a lot. Fall teaches us a lot about letting go. Winter teaches us a lot about just kind of hunkering in and being still. Spring teaches us about hope. Summer teaches us that there's growth possible. And so I wrote the book to be a weekly read. That's a mindfulness practice that's aligned with nature. So the book is seasonal. It starts in spring because I think spring is a newness. And so the reader would get the book and maybe flip it to summer, since summer's coming in a couple weeks, and just read, the week that summer begins. And it walks people through a process of being aware of what's going on around them instead of all the other stuff that fills our head all the time. Getting rid of the nonsense in our life and appreciating what we have in front of us. And so it's really a book for anybody. I think people who are struggling with the future or the past, I think the book is a great opportunity to be reminded that as we watch a leaf open up in the springtime, that we can also continue to grow as human beings, regardless of our age or our ability. And that when fall comes, maybe we're holding on to something that we need to let go of, that we no longer need. We don't need anger anymore. It's served its purpose. Anger has recycled us to take action. The anger that I felt about my daughter and being a single mom turned into action, and I created a beautiful life where I get to go into assisted living homes and work with people. But I had to have the anger first. And so I don't need it anymore. So I let it go. And so the book is really for anybody. I did it because I said I was going to do it. It got me out of my own unhealthy thoughts about lack and what I could no longer do in my body, and got me into my head and into my heart. And so on January 1st of 2025, I said by September, I'm going to publish a book. And then I kind of forgot about that. And summertime came and I thought, oh boy, I better get busy. And so I've had a blog for many, many, many years. And so I took the content from the blog and I just sort of formatted it into a system of 52 weeks that made sense to me. It's not perfect by any means. And then my goal was to have it hit Amazon by the end of September. And it actually went live on Amazon September 29th of last year. So, people ask me all the time, like, how many books have you sold? I don't know. I didn't do it for that. I didn't do it to
Yeah,
be a bestseller. I did it
yeah.
because I said I would. And maybe, I gift books to my assisted living homes, and maybe they sit around the dinner table on Sundays and they read the week and they apply the lesson to their week. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I hope they do. But yeah, it
What
just
do you
was something I needed to do.
What do you hope readers take away from you?
I hope that readers will take away that in this incredibly busy life that we have, that we are deserving and worthy of a few minutes every day to connect with ourselves, to connect with our surroundings, and ultimately to take time every day to be grateful. Because we often have a tendency to focus on what we don't have or what we no longer have, and we miss so many things that are right in front of us. And there's a lot of research on gratitude changing physical heart conditions and helping us sleep better. And there's a lot of research on gratitude. And I've experienced it for myself that gratitude completely changed my life. I was spending too many minutes of my day focusing on what I didn't have instead of recognizing all the blessings that I do have. And when I started paying attention to what I do have, I created more of the good in my life. And I would never have a day without gratitude ever again. So I'm hoping people learn that gratitude is a doorway to a much better life.
You describe yourself as a giver of goodness. I'm curious, what does that look like in practice beyond the studio?
It means that when I'm finished with you today, I'm going to go over to a hospital and I'm going to rub people's feet. It means that to box myself into just being a yoga teacher limits me because what I'm here to do is to show my heart to the world and to be light and to give goodness. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to focus on what I can't do or what I don't have. I want to show up as my best self for other people. And I believe more than anything in this world that what we think, speak, and do is like throwing a pebble into the lake of life. And if I'm going to throw a pebble today, it's going to be a pebble that's based on love. And that love will ripple out to places I don't even know exist. I don't want to contribute to hatred in the world. And so if being a giver of goodness means that I help my neighbor carry her groceries in or I go rub somebody's feet at the hospital that's suffering, that's what I do. And I don't want to be just a yoga teacher. I want to be maybe remembered for more than that, that I ultimately recycled something painful into good and then I gave that goodness away.
Let's talk about what services Embracing Yoga, Spirit Yoga currently offer. Is it in person, virtual, group, one on one?
It's all of the above. So I do go into assisted living homes in my local community. I'm also contracted for virtual yoga across, the country. I'm a volunteer with the Dementia Action Alliance, and so I meet with people 2 times a month for virtual yoga, and they're all over the country that I get to be blessed with, and it's an amazing thing. And I can work individually one-on-one with somebody just like this, and I can help them maybe with their balance or their language or their memory or just their confidence, their forgiveness, their grace, whatever it is. I do groups. I can do it all. It's what I do. I love everything about it. And so I always want to volunteer in some form. I always have one pro bono client, and I am grateful to be with the Dementia Action Alliance where I can serve and not have any financial exchange with that. I think that's really important to my business model and to me, and I always want to keep that. And so
Nice.
I'm good.
Are your services accessible from a cost standpoint? In other words,
Yeah.
do you have sliding scale community classes? Work
I
with
do.
partners?
I have always had the business model that if finances are a barrier, they should not be, and I don't need to be paid. I am grateful that I do get compensation. I keep my rates very, very low because assisted livings don't typically have a budget for a yoga girl. And so I don't want that to be a barrier for people to get my services for an individual. I don't get to bill insurance or anything like that a physical therapist might. And if finances are a barrier, then it doesn't matter. I don't need the money. I don't need it for that. And so I'm very willing to work with people. My yoga studio that we're in right now, when I do have people come to me, a lot of my everyday people who are not living with neurological changes know the work that I do and believe in the work that I do. So they will pay me a little bit extra just because I do good work in the world. And so I always feel like it all comes out in the wash. If somebody can't pay,
Yeah.
somebody else can pay. And it's not what I'm looking for. I'm grateful that
Yeah.
I get paid, but that's not my primary. And that has been a challenge for me helping other yoga teachers learn my method because I have a pretty methodical method as how do I engage somebody? How do I move somebody? And yoga teachers have sadly to me been wanting to do this for the money. And so they don't want to do it for the little money that I charge. And it's been a little disheartening because I think it's a service and it comes from my heart and I don't put a price tag on that. So I'd love to partner with other yoga teachers across the country and teach people how to do this. I've just have a hard time finding people that are not wanting to quit their day job and do it just for money because it's not where it's at.
Yeah. I see. I understand completely. For a stroke survivor, you're in Colorado Springs?
Mhm.
I moved before I moved up Before I came here, I was in Colorado Springs.
Really?
After my stroke, my daughter was there, so she was the one that had the space and that to help
Nice.
me out. And then
Cool.
they left 6 months later.
Oh boy.
I lived up on the northwest side. You know where Coles is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
was like a mile from there. I worked
I'm
for
right by
Coles.
Garden of the Gods, so I can actually ride my
Yeah.
bike to Garden of the Gods. I'm real close.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it
Yeah.
up there. And what if whoever wants to connect with you? What's the best first step?
I don't have a super savvy website. It's a basic website. Email is always great. My email is great. I have a YouTube channel that I have a lot of yoga practices for people in a chair. So there's a whole bunch of videos on adaptive yoga in a chair. I have regular yoga. I have a podcast as well that I talk about mindset and gratitude and grief. And I do some podcasting. So my YouTube channel is pretty busy. Social media, of course, Embracing Spirit Yoga on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is great. I have a website, but it's not super full of anything good. Who goes to websites anyway?
Right, right. Is there anything we haven't asked and you'd love to have our listeners to know?
I think the message that I would want somebody who gets to listen to me feel that there's hope available, and that it doesn't mean every day is butterflies and rainbows, but hope is just walking towards something different. And I love the word hope because hope requires an exhale. You can't say the word hope inhaling. Hope is an exhale, and an exhale is a release, and it's walking towards something. And if my passion comes through in this podcast, that there is hope, that I can feel better in my body and in my heart and in my mind, then I've succeeded. And that it's okay to feel sad. Let's just not stay there so long that we miss the birds chirping, because it's beautiful.
Stacey, thank you for sharing your heart, your work, and your perspective with us today. I appreciate your time. To our listeners, remember your story matters. Your recovery is worth fighting for, and you're never alone on this path. Healing isn't about pushing harder. Sometimes it's about slowing down, listening, and feeling safe again. I challenge you before we close to refer at least 2 people to Stacy, Embracing Yoga, Spirit Yoga, and 2 people to Stroke Warrior Radio. You can be a survivor or make the choice to become a warrior achieving victories every day. Thank you, everyone.
Love it.